The night sky above the alien planet was painted with falling fire. Captain Ryland's ship tore through the clouds like a wounded bird, flames trailing behind it. Inside, alarm screamed. Sparks jumped across the control panels as Ryland fought to steady the craft. "Come on, hold together," he muttered, gripping the lever. But the engines were gone. The ship spun wildly before crashing into a dense forest. The impact threw Ryland forward. Metal screamed. Then, silence. He woke hours later, head throbbing, lying among twisted metal and broken glass. His visor cracked, oxygen low. The planet's twin moons hung above, lighting the jungle with a pale glow. Strange trees whispered in the wind, their leaves glowing faintly blue. He tried to stand, his leg bleeding from shrapnel. Every breath hurt. He looked around. Nothing moved, yet he felt watched. The forest seemed alive, listening. Ryland dragged himself to what was left of his supply case. He found one emergency ration, a flare gun, and a few broken tools. No comms, no signal. He was truly stranded. He whispered to himself, "Okay, survive the night. Find help tomorrow." But as the temperature dropped, cold air bit through his suit. He needed warmth, or he'd freeze before sunrise. Gathering fallen branches, he struggled to make a fire. His trembling hands finally sparked a tiny flame. When the fire caught, its light spread across the clearing like a heartbeat. The warmth was life itself. For a moment, Ryland smiled. Then everything around him went quiet. No wind, no insects, no sound. The silence was unnatural. Slowly, he realized he wasn't alone. In the distance, a soft click echoed, followed by a whisper. It wasn't human. Ryland turned, scanning the shadows. His fire flickered, revealing movement. Figures slipping between the trees, graceful and silent. He grabbed his flare gun. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. Only more whispers, then a flash. Something metallic glinted. A spear shot from the darkness, landing just inches from his face, quivering in the dirt. Ryland's heart pounded. He raised his flare gun toward the shadows. His voice trembled. "I'm not your enemy." The figures paused. He saw glowing eyes, yellow, sharp, intelligent. Then they vanished again. For hours he sat beside the fire, every nerve alive, listening to the strange jungle breathe around him. The moonlight moved slowly through the branches. Somewhere far off, a creature howled, deep and long. Ryland's thoughts drifted to Earth, to the training academy, to the people who might never know he was alive. "Guess it's just you and me now, fire," he whispered. The flame danced gently, crackling in reply, but hidden among the shadows. Several tall shapes crouched in the brush, 3 alien huntresses of the planet Velra. Their eyes glowed faintly under bone-crafted masks. The leader, Kathira, watched Ryland with cold interest. "This one burns the sacred ground," she hissed in her tongue. Her sister Nira whispered back, "He looks weak, but the fire he makes, it's strange." Kathira's gaze didn't move. Strange or dangerous, either way, he dies at dawn. Ryland felt a shift in the air, like the jungle itself was holding its breath. He stared into the trees, unable to see them, but he knew they were there, watching, judging. He fed more branches into the fire, praying the warmth would last till morning. The orange glow danced on his tired face, while unseen eyes followed every motion. When exhaustion finally pulled him down, Ryland slept beside the dying fire. Behind him, the shadows crept closer. One of the huntresses stepped forward, her spear raised, then stopped, staring at the human's bloodied hand resting near the flames. Kathira's voice echoed softly, almost curious now. The fire answers him. "No fear," she turned away. "We take him at sunrise." And as the twin moons faded behind the forest canopy, the first light of dawn touched the human's face, while 3 alien huntresses watched. Unseen from the mist, the flame flickered, alive and defiant. The story of the fire-bearer had just begun. When the morning light broke through the mist, the fire beside Ryland had turned to ashes. He woke slowly, his breath clouding in the cold air. The forest was silent again, but the feeling of being watched hadn't left. He tried to stand, but pain shot through his leg. He winced and leaned against a broken metal plate. "Okay, one step at a time," he whispered, dragging himself toward the wreckage. Then, The sound came. A soft rustle, then another. Before he could turn, something hit his shoulder and knocked him to the ground. A sharp spearhead pressed against his neck. 3 figures stepped out of the jungle mist. Tall, lean, and covered in light armor made of bone and vines. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow under carved masks. They were not beasts. They were intelligent. Hunters. The leader, Kathira, stood closest. Her dark braids were tied with feathers, and her movements were calm but deadly. She stared at Rylan like one studies a dangerous animal. Behind her, 2 others moved. Nira, smaller and curious, and Vara, who held her spear ready to strike. Kathira spoke first, her voice deep and cold. "You burn sacred ground, stranger." Rylan couldn't understand her words, but the tone was enough. He lifted his hand slowly. "Wait, I'm not—" Vara jabbed the spear closer, cutting him off. "No fire," she hissed in their language. Kathira circled him, studying his torn uniform, the human symbol on his chest. "He wears the mark of the Sky Ones," she said to the others. "Those who burned our forests long ago." Rylan shook his head. "I didn't mean harm. My ship crashed." He touched his chest, then pointed to the sky, making a falling motion with his hand. Nira tilted her head, curious. "He fell from the stars." Kathira frowned. "Or came to finish what his kind began." Without warning, she gestured sharply. 2 spears pinned his hands to the ground beside him, missing by inches. He froze. They spoke quickly in their native tongue. Rylan could only hear fragments, the word sacrifice, the word elders. He didn't know what they meant, but it didn't sound good. Kathira crouched near him, face inches from his. "You live for now," she said slowly, trying to mimic human speech. Her accent was rough but clear enough to chill his blood. "You walk with us." They tied his hands with vine ropes that glowed faintly blue, some kind of biolite fiber. When he resisted, Vara struck him hard in the side with her staff. He gasped. Falling to his knees, Nira watched silently, her gaze softer. When Rylan stumbled, she whispered something to Kathira, who ignored her. As they led him deeper into the jungle, he saw how alien this world truly was. Trees pulsed with light, flowers breathed mist. Strange insects hummed around glowing pools of water. Everything looked alive, aware, and ancient. Every few steps, Rylan saw carved totems, wooden figures with fiery eyes. He noticed burn marks around them, as if from old flames. Finally, they reached a massive tree, the size of a building, hollowed into a spiral chamber of vines and gold-green light. The air was warm and filled with strange whispers. Kathira stopped before the entrance and said something ritual-like. The vines opened like a door. Inside, Rylan saw dozens of the same huntresses, bowed heads, weapons, masks, and a symbol of flame carved on the wall behind them. He realized then this wasn't just a tribe. This was a civilization. They forced him to kneel at the center. Kathira removed her mask, revealing sharp, proud features and eyes like liquid amber. She looked down at him and said, "Human, you light fire. Fire brings death. You will answer." Rylan looked up weakly, voice shaking. "Fire also brings life and warmth, hope." For a moment, silence filled the great hall. The huntresses exchanged glances, confused, uncertain. Kathira stared into his eyes, searching for deceit. Instead, she saw fear and honesty. "Hope," she repeated softly, almost as if tasting the word. Behind her, Nira's lips curved in a tiny smile. The leader stepped back, lowering her spear. "We will see if your fire brings life." The guards dragged Rylan away toward a glowing cage of vines. He didn't know what would happen next, but the way Kathira looked at him before she turned away told him something had changed. For the first time, the huntresses had seen a human who didn't burn the forest. He only tried to survive. And somewhere deep within Kathira's heart, a question began to burn. Could the fire be more than destruction? When Rylan opened his eyes, he thought for a moment he was dreaming. The ceiling above him glowed softly like starlight trapped in crystal. Thin roots twisted around the walls, pulsing with a faint golden rhythm, like veins carrying light instead of blood. He tried to move, but something held him down. Looking around, he realized he was lying inside a living cage made of vines that moved ever so slightly, breathing like a creature. His uniform was gone, replaced with soft woven fabric that smelled of herbs. The air was warm and sweet, filled with sounds, whispering leaves, gentle water trickling, and the low hum of strange energy. He wasn't in the jungle anymore. He was inside their city. Outside his cage, huntresses walked across bridges made of tree branches and glowing moss. Children with painted faces chased light insects. It was beautiful and terrifying. Then a familiar face appeared. Nira, the smaller huntress from before, approached cautiously, carrying a bowl of glowing blue fruit. Her golden eyes met his, curious but kind. "You wake," she said in broken English, her accent thick but melodic. "Pain?" Rylan nodded slightly. "A little." She pushed the bowl through the vines. "Eat, heal fast." He hesitated, then took a bite. It tasted like honey and mint, cold and refreshing. For the first time since the crash, warmth spread through him. Nira tilted her head. "Why you come here? Sci-Fi bring you?" "I didn't mean to," he said softly. "My ship broke. I crashed." He mimed the ship falling, making an explosion sound. Nira giggled, a sound like silver bells. "You make noise like child." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's me. Lost child in the wrong forest." Her smile faded a little. "This place, forbidden. No human come here. Old stories say, humans burn world. Kill trees, kill huntresses." Rylan looked down, guilt washing over him. "That wasn't me. But maybe people like me did." Nira watched his face closely, trying to read truth in his eyes. Then quietly she said, "You different." Before he could reply, footsteps echoed. The vines around his cage tightened slightly. Kathira entered. Her presence was commanding, taller, stronger, and surrounded by 2 guards. She looked at Nira sharply. "You speak to him?" Nira bowed her head. "He wake. He need food." Kathira's gaze turned to Rylan. "You understand me now?" He nodded slowly. "A little." She tossed a small crystal sphere onto the ground between them. It shimmered, and a calm voice spoke in both their languages, a translation stone. "Now speak true," Kathira said. "Why you light fire?" "I needed warmth. I was freezing. I didn't know it was sacred ground." Kathira studied him in silence, her eyes sharp and unreadable. "Fire is forbidden. Fire took our home once. It eats everything." Rylan's voice trembled, but he met her gaze. "On my world, fire gives life. It protects from dark. Maybe it can protect here too." A tense silence filled the air. The guards shifted nervously. Finally, Kathira turned to Nira. "You watch him. If he lies, end it." With that, she left, her cloak of leaves trailing behind her like a storm cloud. Nira glanced at Rylan through the vines. She strong. She fear fire, but maybe she also fear truth. Rylan leaned back, exhaustion heavy in his bones. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he murmured. "I just want to go home." Nira's eyes softened. "Maybe home, not sky. Maybe here." He looked at her, unsure what she meant. But in that glowing forest city, surrounded by alien beauty, a small connection began to spark, fragile but real. As night fell, the city lights brightened like constellations. From the highest branch, Kathira stood alone, staring down at the glowing cage below. She whispered to herself, "If he is truly different, then maybe the old fire is not our enemy." But deep in the jungle, shadows moved, spies of the elders who had already learned of the humans' arrival, and somewhere far beyond the forest, something ancient stirred in the dark. Something that remembered the first fire humans had ever brought to Velra. The sun of Velra rose like a burning coin above the misty jungle. In the heart of the Huntress city, drums echoed. A circle of warriors gathered beneath the great tree, their faces painted in red clay and silver ash. At the center stood Rylan, weak, bruised, but standing tall. Kathira walked toward him, spear in hand. Her golden eyes burned like molten metal. "You say fire gives life," she said through the translator crystal. "Then you will prove it. Tonight you face the trial of fire," Rylan frowned. "Trial?" Nira, standing beside her sister, whispered. Survive night alone in the forest. No weapon, no help. If you live, you earn trust. Ryland's throat went dry. And if I don't? Kathira's answer was cold. Then the forest decides your fate, the crowd murmured, voices like rustling leaves. Some watched him with curiosity, others with hatred. Vara, the jealous huntress, smirked from the back. He will not see another sunrise, she muttered. That evening, they led Ryland beyond the city's glowing routes into the wild jungle. The air grew thicker, full of alien sounds, growls, screeches, and distant thunder. Kathira handed him one small spark crystal. Only this, she said. Make your fire. Keep it alive. The beasts of the dark hate light, but they hunger for fear. He took it, nodding silently. Nira looked at him one last time, her voice trembling. Don't let the flame die. The vines parted, and the jungle swallowed him whole. As darkness fell, Ryland moved carefully through the undergrowth. The air smelled of wet earth and electricity. His footsteps sank into glowing moss that pulsed faintly under his boots. He found a small clearing near a stream and gathered dry branches. His hands trembled as he struck the spark crystal against a rock. After several tries, a faint flame flickered to life. It was small, but it was hope. He smiled weakly. There we go, he whispered. You and me again, fire. The flame's light reached only a few feet, but it kept the shadows at bay. Strange eyes blinked in the darkness. Hundreds of them. The night deepened. Insects hissed. A low growl rumbled through the trees. Ryland froze. A creature emerged. A massive four-legged predator with black fur and tusks like knives. Its body shimmered with faint blue scales. It circled him, hissing, the flame reflecting in its yellow eyes. Ryland raised a branch, his heart pounding. The creature lunged. He rolled aside, grabbing the burning stick. As it turned, he thrust the fire toward its face. The beast shrieked, recoiling in pain. It hated the flame. Ryland shouted, "Back! Go back!" His voice echoed, raw and desperate. The creature hesitated, then vanished into the shadows. For a moment, silence. Then, rain. Cold drops splattered over him, hissing against the flame. "No, no, no!" he shouted, shielding it with his hands. The fire sputtered. Smoke rose. The spark crystal dimmed. His chest tightened. He tore a piece of his torn shirt, dipped it in the fuel gel from his wrist beacon, and wrapped it around a branch. His hands bled, but he didn't stop. He struck the spark again. Once, twice, nothing. Then, on the third try, light. A small spark became a flame, then a blaze. The warmth kissed his face. He smiled through tears. Above, unseen huntresses watched from the trees. Nira clutched the branch beside her, whispering, "He did it." Kathira's eyes narrowed. "He bleeds for fire. He fears it, yet keeps it alive," Vara hissed. "Or maybe he controls it, just like the old humans." But Kathira didn't answer. She couldn't look away. Down below, Ryland sat beside the crackling flame, soaked, shaking but alive. The jungle around him glowed, not with hatred now, but with cautious respect. The predators retreated. The fire had claimed the night. As dawn broke, the mist cleared to reveal him sitting upright, eyes open, the flame still burning beside him. When Kathira and her huntresses descended, even the elders stayed silent. The human had survived what no outsider ever had. Kathira approached slowly, her voice quiet. "The fire lives because of you." Ryland smiled faintly. "No, because it refused to die." The huntresses stared. The legend of the fire-bearer was no longer a myth. It had just taken human form. The morning after the trial of fire, the city of the huntresses buzzed with whispers. Everywhere Ryland walked, alien eyes followed him, some filled with awe, others with cold suspicion. No outsider had ever survived the jungle alone. No one had faced the night beasts and returned with fire still burning. Now the human was no longer the trespasser. He was the fire-bearer. But not everyone saw that as a blessing. Kathira stood on the high bridge of the great tree, watching him from above. She had seen courage before, but Ryland's defiance of death had shaken her faith in old legends. The story said humans brought ruin, yet this one had fought to keep the light alive. Beside her, Vara's eyes burned with jealousy. "You risk much for him," she said coldly. The elders won't forgive this. A human walking among us and it dishonors the flame. Kathira didn't turn. He earned his life. The forest itself spared him, Vara sneered. Or maybe he tricks you, like his kind tricked the old tribes before they burned our world. Kathira's grip tightened on her spear. Enough, Vara. But deep down, Vara's hatred was already turning into something darker. A plan. Meanwhile, down near the Healer's Grove, Nira tended to Ryland's wounds. She cleaned the cuts on his arms with glowing sap, whispering, "You fight fire like you born with it." Ryland chuckled softly. Back home, we used fire every day. We cook, we build, we protect. It's not a weapon unless someone makes it one. Nira's golden eyes softened. Kathira says maybe fire, not curse. Maybe it is gift. He looked at her. Your sister's brave. She listens to reason. She listens to truth, Nira said proudly. But others fear truth more than death. As she spoke, a shadow moved beyond the vines. Vara, listening in silence. Her jaw tightened. He is turning them all, she whispered bitterly. Even Nira. That night, the forest winds carried the sound of horns. Kathira turned sharply. The signal came from the outer watchtowers. Before she could move, a group of armored huntresses arrived, bearing the crimson sigil of the Elder Council. At their head stood an ancient figure draped in vines and bone jewelry. His voice echoed like thunder. Kathira of the 7th clan, he declared, you harbor a human, a creature of fire. You break the old law. Hand him over. Ryland stepped forward, confused but unafraid. What's happening? Kathira's expression hardened. The elders, they have judged you. They want your blood to cleanse the land. Vara appeared behind the elders, her smirk hidden beneath her mask. He should never have lived, she said. He blinds our leader with false hope. Kathira's eyes flashed. You betrayed us. I protected us, Vara spat. Before he burns us all, tension filled the air. Spears raised. The huntresses surrounded Ryland and Kathira. Nira ran forward, shouting, No! He saved us. He faced the dark alone, but her voice was lost in the rising chaos. The elders gave the order. Take him. Ryland looked at Kathira. If I run, they'll hunt you too. Kathira hesitated only a moment. Then we run together. She turned, slashing the vines behind them, and pulled Ryland through the narrow path leading deep into the forest. The sound of war cries echoed behind them. Arrows pierced the air, glowing red as they flew past. Nira followed close, shouting, This way! As the three of them disappeared into the mist. Vara watched from the treetop, anger and regret twisting in her chest. The fire has spread, she whispered bitterly, and soon everything will burn. As they ran through the endless jungle, Ryland stumbled, exhausted. Kathira caught him, her voice low but fierce. You should have fled alone. He shook his head. I don't leave friends behind. Kathira stared at him, breathless, torn between duty and something deeper. Trust. Behind them, the drums of the elders thundered through the forest. The huntresses of Velra were no longer united. The human had brought fire, and fire had brought war. The night sky burned red above the forest of Velra. Flares streaked through the clouds as the elders' army advanced, hundreds of huntresses moving through the glowing trees like shadows of vengeance. Kathira, Nira, and Ryland crouched near an ancient ridge overlooking the city below. The great tree shimmered faintly in the distance, his crash site just beyond it. Smoke from burning torches spread like fog. They're hunting us, Ryland whispered, eyes scanning the horizon. All because I lit a fire. Kathira's voice was steady, but her heart ached. No, because they fear what they do not understand. Nira looked at the two of them, her sister's defiance and the human's quiet courage, and whispered, If they find us, they will burn everything, even the younglings. Ryland clenched his jaw. Then we stop them before that happens. Kathira turned sharply. You would fight our own kind? He met her gaze. I'm not fighting your people. I'm fighting fear. And fear spreads faster than any flame. The jungle rustled below. The army was closing in. Rylan studied the wreckage of his old ship scattered through the forest. Among the debris, he found a cracked energy cell and part of his emergency signal tower. He smiled faintly. This might work. Nira tilted her head. What is it? Fire from the sky, Rylan said softly, but controlled this time. He began connecting wires, twisting metal fragments, working with what little power remained. Sparks jumped between his fingers. The energy cell flickered. Kathira watched, mesmerized. Your fire comes from stone and metal. It obeys you, Rylan chuckled. Only when I ask nicely. Moments later, the air vibrated with a deep hum. The broken tower came alive, emitting a soft pulsing light that climbed into the clouds. Nira's eyes widened. What is it doing? Calling for help, Rylan said. But more than that, it will bring light. The ground trembled. The Elder's army entered the clearing, Vara at their front, her mask-cracked eyes filled with fury. Kathira, she shouted. You betrayed Velra for a human. Kathira raised her spear. I protect Velra from ignorance. Vara's army surrounded them. Spears glinted, arrows drawn. The elders watched from behind, chanting old prayers for purification. Rylan stood between the two sides, holding his flare launcher, its energy cell glowing dangerously bright. If you attack, everything burns, he warned, then burn. Vara screamed and lunged forward. The jungle exploded with light. A beam of pure fire shot from the tower into the sky, painting the clouds gold and white. The air roared like thunder. Everyone froze, eyes wide, blinded by the brilliance. The trees glowed, not from destruction but illumination. The fire climbed upward instead of spreading outward, a pillar of flame that cast warmth instead of death. Vara fell to her knees, awe replacing rage. What is this? Rylan shouted above the roar. This is what fire was meant to be, light, not death. Kathira's voice joined his. See with open eyes. The flame gives life, it protects. The army hesitated. The elders shielded their faces, their chants breaking. The wind from the tower blew through the clearing, warm and bright. Kathira turned to Rylan, her face glowing in the orange light. You've changed their fear into hope. Rylan smiled faintly. No, you did. You just needed to see it. Then the tower burst, sending embers into the sky like falling stars. For a moment, silence. Only the soft crackle of flame remained. Vara dropped her spear, tears streaking her ash-painted cheeks. Maybe. The old stories were wrong. Kathira looked at Rylan, a human who had survived, who had lit a forbidden fire, and who had shown them its true meaning. The jungle, once dark, now glowed like dawn above them. A streak of light crossed the sky. A rescue ship responding to Rylan's beacon. He watched it, his voice quiet. Home's coming for me. Kathira's voice trembled. And yet, you already brought home here. As the night faded, the fire in the sky dimmed, not in destruction but in peace. The Huntresses lowered their weapons. The elders fell silent, and in that calm light, the human and the huntress stood side by side, united by a flame that neither world would ever forget. The dawn after the battle was quiet. No drums, no war cries, only the soft rustling of the great trees of Velra, swaying under a sky still touched by golden embers. The Huntresses walked among the ashes of the battlefield, not in sorrow, but in wonder. The fire had burned through the night, yet it had left the forest alive. The trees glowed softly, their wounds healing with warmth instead of decay. Kathira stood at the edge of the ridge, her armor cracked, her face lit by the new sun. Beside her, Rylan watched the horizon where the light of his rescue ship blinked faintly in the distance. His way home. You'll leave soon, Kathira said quietly. Her tone carried no anger, only a strange emptiness. Rylan nodded slowly. If I stay, the elders might never accept peace. But if I go, maybe they'll remember what the fire truly meant. She looked down, gripping her spear. The fire changed everything. You changed everything. He smiled faintly. Maybe that's what fire does. It changes things, for better or worse. In the city below, the once divided clans now gathered together. The elders, humbled by what they had seen, stood before the great tree. Vara, her mask broken, approached Kathira and bowed. "You were right," she said softly. "The fire was never our enemy. It was our mirror." Kathira touched her shoulder. "And you were brave enough to see it." Rylan watched as the Huntresses rebuilt their homes, carving new patterns into their walls, flames interwoven with vines. It was a symbol of unity, life and light together. Nira ran up to him carrying a small bundle. "For you," she said, smiling shyly. He opened it. Inside was a charm made of carved wood and glowing stone, shaped like a tiny flame. "What is it?" he asked. "It is your mark," Nira said proudly. "So the stars will know Firebearer lived here." Rylan chuckled softly, touched more than he could say. "Thank you, little sister." Nira's eyes sparkled. "When Skyfire returns again, you come back, yes?" He looked at Kathira, then back at Nira. "If the stars guide me, I will." As the rescue ship descended, a warm wind swept through the forest. The Huntresses gathered, watching silently. Kathira stepped closer to him. "Before you go," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "tell me one thing. Why did you fight so hard to keep the fire alive that night?" Rylan paused. His eyes softened. "Because in the darkest moments, fire is the only thing that reminds us we're still alive." Kathira nodded slowly, her golden eyes glistening. "Then the fire in us will never die." He took a small device from his belt, a communicator. Placing it gently into her hand, he said, "When you see lights moving across your sky, this will call us. When you're ready, reach out. Humanity will listen." Kathira held the device to her heart. "And when you see a flame on your horizon, remember, we are watching too." Moments later, the rescue ship's engines roared, lifting him toward the heavens. The Huntresses shielded their eyes from the golden light. Kathira stood tall, her cloak fluttering in the wind, watching the fire trail vanish into the clouds. Nira whispered beside her, "He goes to the stars." Kathira smiled faintly. "Yes, but he left his fire here." That night, under the twin moons, the Huntresses gathered once more around a single flame, the first sacred fire ever lit since the Age of Ruin. Children listened as Kathira spoke. "There was once a man from the stars, a fire-bearer who faced the dark with light in his hands and hope in his heart. He taught us that fire is not a curse, it is courage made visible." The flame flickered gently, its glow reflecting in every eye. And somewhere far beyond Velra, in the endless sky, a ship glided through the stars, its engines burning like a promise. The legend of the fire-bearer had begun, and the universe would never forget the human who lit a fire. That changed a world.